What would you do if the person you trusted most in the house suddenly started acting strangely? When Lynn found herself alone with her father-in-law one stormy night, the line between care and fear blurred. Secrets from the past whispered through the walls. Shadows moved where no one should be, and every moment felt like the house itself was holding its breath. Could she protect her child and uncover the truth, or would the mysteries of the house consume them both? Watch closely. Every shadow, every word, every silence matters. The old wooden house was silent that night. Only the saw from the ceiling fan moved the air through the empty halls. Lynn slept in the guest room, her newborn child resting in a cradle beside her. The child had finally fallen asleep after hours of crying, and Lynn's body felt heavy with exhaustion. Outside, the moonlight stretched across the yard like a pale sheet. Her husband had been away for weeks due to work, leaving her alone in the house with her father-in-law, Mr. Huey. He was a quiet man, known in the village for his strict discipline, and rarely spoke unless necessary. But ever since his wife passed 2 years ago, a certain loneliness had settled into his eyes, like a shadow that refused to lift. That night, Lynn stirred awake. She heard footsteps in the corridor, slow and deliberate, as if someone was trying not to be heard. Her heart tightened. She sat up, the dim blue of the nightlight, tracing the shape of her face and the curve of her tense shoulders. The door handle clicked, softly at first, then a careful push. Mr. Huey stood at the doorway. He was holding a folded blanket in his hands. "The baby was crying earlier," he said, voice low, rough, almost unfamiliar. "I thought you might need this. The night is colder than usual." Lynn remained still, unsure. There had already been whispered rumors in the village about households where loneliness and vulnerability twisted into something dangerous. She did not want to believe such thoughts, yet they moved through her mind like shadows in candlelight. Mr. Huey stepped into the room, not closer to her, but toward the cradle. He looked at the child, and something deep and weary crossed his expression. It was not desire. It was grief. "When your husband was this small," he murmured, "I failed to hold him. I worked endlessly, thinking it was responsibility. But I did not know that a child also needs a father's arms." Lynn watched his hands tremble slightly. The blanket slipped from his fingers and landed beside the cradle. Her breath eased, but only slightly. "You love him," Lynn said softly, although her voice remained guarded. "I am trying to," he answered. "The right way this time." There was silence. An unspoken heaviness filled the room, thick as fog. Two people who, though family by law, barely understood one another. Mr. Huey finally turned to leave, but before stepping out, he paused. "You must be careful, too," he said. "People in the village talk. Even honest behavior can be twisted into something ugly when seen through the wrong eyes." His footsteps retreated down the hallway. Lynn sat there sleepless, staring at the half-open door. Her mind swirled, unsure whether she should feel relieved, unsettled, or afraid of something she could not yet name. The night remained silent, but something had shifted in the house, something that both of them would have to face. The story does not end here. It is only beginning. The next morning arrived with quiet sunlight spreading across the tile floors. Lynn was already awake. Though she had barely slept, her eyes were shadowed, and her heartbeat seemed to echo the memory of last night. The half-open door still lingered in her thoughts like a silent warning. She prepared breakfast in the kitchen. The smell of warm rice and ginger fish broth filled the air, gentle and familiar. She could hear Mr. Huey's footsteps approaching from outside, heavy and steady, like a man who carried more weight inside than his shoulders could show. He entered the kitchen, but neither of them spoke at first. There was no hostility, only a careful distance, like two people walking across thin ice. "Eat while it is warm," she said finally, placing a bowl in front of him. His eyes lifted to hers for a brief moment. He nodded, then sat down. The silence between them stretched again. But this time, it was not emptiness. It was full of questions neither dared to voice. After a while, he spoke quietly. "Your husband called this morning. He says there will be delays. The construction site is behind schedule." Lynn felt the air leave her lungs in a slow, tired sigh. More days. More nights in this house that felt both safe and uncertain. She held her child closer, as if the baby could anchor her. Later in the afternoon, Mr. Huey tended to the garden. He trimmed the orchid vines his late wife had once cared for, every touch gentle and precise. Lynn watched from the doorway, noticing how the lines on his back seemed heavier when he thought no one was looking. For a moment, compassion rose in her. Grief changes a person. Sometimes it silences them so deeply that their heart becomes a locked room no one knows how to open. However, compassion did not erase caution. That evening, rain began to fall. Soft at first, then steadily, like the sky was releasing a sorrow that held too long. Lynn closed the shutters and checked every room, ensuring all doors were firmly secured. Not because she feared him anymore, but because the village, the whispers, the eyes that always watched, were far more dangerous. She placed her child to sleep again. The lullaby she hummed was fragile, like a thread holding her together. Night deepened. The storm grew louder. Thunder rolled through the valley, shaking the windows. And then, as she prepared to lie down, there was a knock at her door. Not slow, not hesitant. 3 firm knocks. Her heartbeat quickened. Lynn. Mr. Huey's voice came from behind the wood. Steady, but something in the tone was different from last night. She did not answer. The rain hammered harder against the roof. The child shifted in the cradle. He spoke again, lower now. There is something you should know. Something about your husband. Her breath caught. She stepped closer to the door, though her hand did not reach the handle. The night seemed to hold its breath. What about him? She asked, voice barely louder than the rain. Mr. Huey did not respond immediately. The silence that followed was long. Too long. When he finally spoke, his voice was strained, as if carrying a truth that weighed dangerously. He has not been away for work, he said. And the reason he left this house, you deserve to know. Lynn's entire body froze. The rain continued. The room tightened around her. Her mind began to race toward possibilities she was not ready to face. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, the baby began to cry. A sharp, desperate cry that filled the entire house. The door remained closed. Mr. Huey's shadow lingered behind it, waiting, and the answer to his words remained suspended in the storm-filled air. The night was far from over. The baby's cries cut sharply through the storm, echoing off the walls like a warning. Lynn rushed to the cradle, her arms trembling as she picked up the child. The warmth of the tiny body pressed against her chest, grounding her. Yet the tension in her mind remained heavier than the rain outside. Mr. Huey's presence lingered at the door, silent now, not moving, not retreating, as if the house itself had swallowed him into its walls. She could feel the weight of his eyes without seeing them. "Why are you here?" she finally asked, her voice steady, though her heart hammered like a drum. The baby calmed slightly in her arms, sensing her fear, yet the unease between the two adults thickened unbroken. Mr. Huey did not answer immediately. Instead, he leaned his forehead against the doorframe, a gesture that seemed to carry decades of regret. The sound of the rain hitting the roof was the only movement in the room. Even the wind seemed to pause, listening. "I know you will not believe me," he said at last. Perhaps no one would. But some truths cannot wait any longer. Lynn felt a chill creep along her spine. The storm outside mirrored the storm within her chest. She clutched the child closer, feeling every heartbeat like a countdown she could not stop. "The things your husband has left behind," he continued, voice strained. "The promises, the papers, the people, none of it is what it seems. If you step outside this room, you will see, or perhaps you will never see it at all." She wanted to step back. She wanted to run. Yet curiosity, like a shadow, rooted her to the floor. The door creaked slightly, a slow warning that the wood itself was alive. Lynn glanced at the hallway. Darkness pressed against the edges, swallowing the faint light from a night lamp. Her own breath sounded loud in the room, uncomfortably loud. Mr. Huey moved a hand toward the handle, slow, deliberate, but he did not touch it. His eyes were fixed on her, on the child, as if measuring the exact moment the truth could fall, without breaking her completely. "You must decide," he said quietly, "whether to see the truth now, or wait until it comes to you by other means. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the room in stark white for a heartbeat. The shadows danced along the walls, and Lynn thought she saw shapes, figures moving in the corners of the room, just beyond her vision. She tightened her grip on the baby, her mind racing through every possibility. What was the truth he spoke of? What secrets had been buried behind the walls of this quiet house? And why did it feel as though the very air around her had grown heavier, pressing down like a living thing? She opened her mouth to demand clarity, to force answers. But the words stuck in her throat. The storm raged harder. The windows rattled. Outside, the world seemed to tremble under the weight of something unseen. Mr. Huey's shadow remained at the door, unmoving. And then the baby stirred again, restless, shifting against her chest. The moment stretched, elongated, filled with the tension of an answer that might come but never would. Time in the room seemed to fracture, each second echoing like a drumbeat of warning. Lynn's eyes flicked between the door, the child, and the darkened hallway beyond. She could feel that something was about to happen, something unavoidable, yet it did not. The storm continued, the baby quieted, and Mr. Huey simply stood there waiting, and the house waited with him, for the moment that had not yet come. The night was not over. It had only begun. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. The storm outside softened, leaving only the soft tap of rain against the roof. Inside, the house was unervingly quiet. Lynn sat on the edge of the bed, the baby asleep against her chest, but her mind refused rest. The faint scent of wet earth and orchids drifted through the open window. It was a reminder that the world outside continued, indifferent to the unease within these walls. Mr. Huey remained in the hallway, just beyond the lamplight's reach. He did not move. He did not speak. Yet his presence was undeniable, a silent pressure that made her skin prickle. Lynn finally rose, careful not to wake the child. She approached the doorway, every step deliberate, as if the floorboards might betray her. He did not look at her, only straight ahead toward the darkened corridor. Something about his stance made her chest tighten. It was not anger, nor was it malice. It was anticipation. "Tell me," she whispered. "Tell me what you mean." Mr. Huey's shoulders tensed, but his voice remained calm, almost eerily so. "Some truths," he said slowly, "cannot be spoken in the light of day. They are meant to be felt, understood, in moments when the heart is ready. And tonight, your heart is on the edge of readiness, though you may not realize it." She felt frustration rise, sharp and bitter. The storm had passed, yet the tension in the room had not lifted. It had only thickened. Footsteps sounded from upstairs, soft and hurried. Though she knew the house was empty, her pulse quickened. She looked toward the staircase, shadows pooling at the base like ink spilled across white tiles. Mr. Huey's hand lifted slightly, as if to warn her, though he did not speak. The baby stirred again, turning in her arms. A tiny whimper escaped, fragile and vulnerable. It pulled her attention immediately, but the feeling of something unseen lingered at the edge of her perception. She looked back at Mr. Huey. He was still frozen, watching, waiting. A sudden gust of wind rattled the window, and the candlelight flickered. For a moment, the shadows on the walls seemed to shift, forming shapes she could not name. Figures appeared where there were none. Voices whispered that might not have existed. Her heart raced, yet the house held its breath. "You must listen," Mr. Huey said quietly. "Though the words will not make sense yet, the answers will come, but only when the night decides it is ready to reveal them. Until then," he did not finish. The sentence hung in the air like a blade, sharp and heavy. Lynn waited, leaning slightly forward, every nerve straining. Her mind tried to imagine what he might say next, but the silence answered her instead. The baby slept again, the storm outside fully spent. Yet the storm inside the house, in the shadows and in the spaces between words, had only begun. Mr. Huey took a slow step backward, then another, and another, until he disappeared into the darkness of the hallway. Lynn remained frozen, the child in her arms, staring at the door. She knew that what he had left unsaid was more dangerous, more significant, than anything he had spoken, and she knew with a certainty that chilled her, that the night had many more secrets to keep. She turned toward the window. The first light of dawn was brushing the edges of the sky, pale and hesitant. Yet she felt no relief. The house still waited. Mr. Huey still waited. And the truth remained just out of reach. The day would come. But not yet. The story did not end here. It was far from over. The first rays of sunlight barely touched the floorboards when Lynn heard it, a soft creaking, almost imperceptible, from the far end of the hallway. She froze, clutching the baby closer, feeling its tiny heartbeat press against her chest like a metronome of fear. The house was supposed to be empty. Only she, the baby, and the faint echo of last night's storm remained. Yet the sound resisted, deliberate, measured, as if someone or something was walking just beyond her vision. Her eyes scanned the dim hallway, tracing shadows that refused to settle. The walls seemed taller than usual, the corners darker. Every step she imagined she heard resonated in her chest. Then came a whisper. It was so faint, she thought she imagined it at first. But it was real, a low, deliberate sound that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Lynn, her breath caught. The name was familiar, not from the past, but from something buried deep in her memory, a voice she could not place. She spun toward the door, expecting to see Mr. Huey, but the hallway was empty. No movement, no shadow. She returned her gaze to the cradle. The baby stirred, turning its head, tiny hands reaching as if sensing her unease. Then a knock, single, deliberate. It came from the study upstairs. Lynn's heart thundered. The study had been locked for months, ever since her husband left for work. No one had entered. Yet now, the sound of the knuckles against her was real, undeniable. She hesitated. Every instinct screamed to ignore it, to run, to leave the house entirely. Yet some part of her, a part that had been watching, waiting for nights like this, compelled her forward. She placed the baby carefully on the bed, wrapping it in a blanket, and began to climb the stairs. Each step creaked beneath her weight, echoing like a drum in a silent house. Her pulse raced with every movement, every sound amplified in the heavy air. Reaching the study door, she paused. The knock came again, a single, slow rap. She touched the handle. Cold, metal biting her palm. The room beyond remained dark. She could not see what awaited her, could not anticipate the shape of the truth she had been chasing through sleepless nights. She whispered his name, Mr. Huey's name, but no reply came. The second knock sounded, slightly louder, more urgent this time. Her hand hovered over the handle. The house seemed to hold its breath. Even the wind outside had died. And then silence. No one moved. No one spoke. The study remained closed, unyielding, guarding its secrets. Lynn backed away slowly, her heart still racing, mind spinning with possibilities she could not yet comprehend. She returned to the bedroom, the baby secure in her arms. The house was still. The morning light seemed weaker somehow, as if hesitant to touch the shadows lingering in the corners. She wondered if she should leave, if she should confront Mr. Huey, if she should dare to enter the study herself. But the pull, the inexplicable, unrelenting pull, kept her rooted to the spot. Hours passed. The baby slept. The sun climbed higher. Yet the knock never came again. The study remained silent. The hallway remained empty. And Mr. Huey remained somewhere between presence and absence, a figure just out of reach. Lynn sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the blanket around her child. Her mind replayed every sound, every shadow, every whisper from the night before. The tension lingered, thick and tangible. She knew the answers existed somewhere in the house, somewhere in the silence, in the shadows, in the locked study. But for now, they would not come. The house had decided to withhold them. And so the waiting began. The waiting that stretched long into the day, into tomorrow and beyond. The waiting that promised revelations, but promised them only when the house was ready. The story did not move forward. It lingered, suspended, like a note held high, waiting to fall, but never quite landing. The night had not ended. It had only deepened. By the late afternoon, the sunlight had faded to a dull gray, filtered through thick clouds that hinted at rain yet to come. The house felt heavier now, the walls closer, as if the air itself carried the weight of unspoken truths. Lynn moved carefully through the rooms, the baby in her arms, her eyes scanning every shadow, every corner, as if they might shift as she looked away. She paused in the hallway outside the study. The door remained shut. No sound escaped from within, yet a quiet tension seemed to emanate from it, as if the room itself were holding its breath, waiting for her to act, for someone to disturb its fragile balance. A chill ran down her spine, not from the cold air, but from the awareness that the house had its own rhythm, its own sense of timing, and tonight it would decide when or if its secrets would be revealed. She considered calling for Mr. Huey, yet the thought of breaking the silence made her hesitant. He had already revealed so little, and his presence carried an unsettling gravity she could not ignore. And what if he did not answer? What if the house itself kept him elsewhere, holding him like it held the truth? The baby shifted in her arms. Its soft breaths were the only sound in the house. For a moment, Lynn let herself relax, letting the rhythm of its heartbeat calm her. But the relief was fleeting. She felt the walls close, and again, the air thickening with anticipation. A soft rustle came from upstairs, not from the study, but from the attic. The sound was slight, almost like the scuff of fabric against wood, but it carried through the silence like a secret being whispered directly into her mind. Her hands tightened around the baby. She could not ignore it. Yet moving toward the attic felt impossible, as if crossing that threshold would awaken forces she was not ready to face. Minutes stretched into hours. The clouds outside darkened further, heavy with unshed rain. The house remained silent except for her careful footsteps, echoing in the corridors like small signals of defiance. Then she saw it, a faint flicker of light beneath the study door. It pulsed subtle, almost imperceptible, as if the room were breathing alive. Her heart leapt. The truth was there, just beyond the barrier of the door, and yet completely unreachable. She leaned closer, straining to see, to hear, to understand. The light did not grow, nor did it vanish. It simply waited, patient, unyielding. The baby stirred again, small fingers brushing her cheek, grounding her in the fragile present. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, to summon courage for whatever revelation awaited behind that door. And then she heard it, the faintest whisper, almost like wind passing through an old, empty room. Not yet. The voice was unmistakable, low, deliberate, and filled with a weight she could not comprehend. Not Mr. Huey, not the baby. Something older, something that had always been there, watching, waiting. Lynn stepped back, clutching the child tightly. Her mind raced. The study remained shut. The flicker beneath the door continued. The whisper repeated, barely audible, yet impossible to ignore. Not yet. Hours passed. The house held its breath. The light pulsed. The storm outside remained distant, a murmur compared to storm within these walls. And still nothing happened. The door did not open. No one appeared. The answers remained suspended, as if the house itself had decided the truth was not yet ready to be known. Lynn sank onto the floor, the baby safe in her arms. She realized then that the night, the house, and Mr. Huey were all part of a rhythm she could not control. And perhaps she was not meant to. The story had paused. The night had deepened. And somewhere, just beyond the light of the study, the truth waited, patient, silent, and deliberately delayed. She could do nothing but wait, and wait, and wait. The story was far from over. It was only holding its breath. Days passed in a fragile rhythm. Lynn and the baby moved through the house with cautious steps, aware of shadows and echoes that seemed to follow them, yet never fully revealing themselves. Mr. Huey resumed his quiet routine, tending the garden, repairing broken fixtures, and moving through the halls as if nothing had happened. Yet the air between them remained charged, a delicate tension that neither spoke directly. One evening, Lynn sat by the window, the baby asleep beside her. The sky glowed faintly orange, and the soft hum of cicadas filled the garden. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to breathe fully, to feel the quiet without dread. She realized that some truths in life, painful, unsettling, or incomprehensible, do not demand immediate answers. Some must be understood gradually, in the spaces between words, in moments of quiet reflection. Mr. Hui approached slowly, carrying a small box. He placed it gently on the table without a word, then stood by the doorway, watching her. Curiosity overcame fear. Lin opened the box to find photographs, letters, and small mementos of her husband as a child, along with notes written by Mr. Hui himself. She did not read them immediately. Instead, she held them close, feeling the weight of memories, the love of the father, and the complexity of the man who had silently shaped the life she shared with her child. For the first time, Lin understood the strange tension, the whispered warnings, the locked doors, and unanswered questions. They were not meant to frighten her. They were a test of patience, trust, and resilience. The storm had passed. The house was still, and those shadows lingered at the edges. They no longer felt threatening. Instead, they were reminders that life's deepest truths often reveal themselves slowly, and that the courage to wait, to endure, could be its own kind of victory. Mr. Hui finally spoke, his voice low, but steady. Some things cannot be fixed overnight, but they can be understood, and perhaps that is enough. Lin nodded, holding the baby closer. She felt the weight of the past, the uncertainty of the present, and the fragile hope of the future all at once. The house no longer seemed like a cage, but a vessel of lives intertwined, waiting, moving, and slowly healing. The door to the study remained closed, the flicker of light no longer urgent. The mystery that haunted her now felt like a quiet promise. The world will reveal itself in its own time, and patience is sometimes the only way to truly see. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Lin gazed at the fading light. The baby stirred, a gentle yawn escaping tiny lips. And in that moment, the house, the past, and the uncertainties ahead all felt suspended in perfect balance, waiting but no longer threatening. The story had reached its pause, not in fear, but in understanding. And the night, finally, held a sense of calm, as if it had been waiting for this very moment. The house whispered softly around them. And for the first time, Lin felt that the whispers were no longer warnings. They were an invitation to live, fully and bravely, in a world where some mysteries remained beautifully unresolved.